Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's 9 o'clock. This is Dan Wootton Tonight with me, Mark Dolan. And after insisting on speaking lessons for school children, it was Keir Starmer who ended up tongue-tied as he was ambushed by the Green lobby.
Not just economic powers.
Reinstate your pledge for 28 billion per year.
I gave my on the mission on green power. We did that last month. We've done that one.
He's rattled, but what the Labour leader doesn't realise is that it's him feeding the big green monster with his maniacal push for net zero. Plus, as Starmer vows to break the glass ceiling with his education reforms, is this doublespeak for being in the pocket of the teaching unions? I'll cover all of that in my digest next, and then I'll get the views of my superstar panel. Tonight, Alison Pearson, Sean Bailey and Amy Nicole-Turner. Elsewhere, the Duke of Sussex is in the news. He's been spotted at American 4th of July celebrations just hours before his own father's Scottish coronation. So, is Prince Harry a traitor? Top royal insider Petronella Wyatt gives her unmissable verdict. Also tonight, after she was spotted taking a gas-guzzling helicopter to Glastonbury, troubled This Morning presenter Holly Willoughby says that she's in the tank for Just Stop Oil.
Our hope is that somewhere higher up will start to make a difference.
Double standards from a star? Who knew? So can we trust establishment media to practice what they preach? Fleet Street icon Kelvin MacKenzie is uncancelled later in the show. And after the ugly scenes at the Trick Awards, where GB News presenters were booed and heckled, there's been another shocking attack against the channel, your channel, from industry lovies. That is our incredibly talented head of marketing being heckled by a room of drunk, arrogant men. More on this shocking story later. In the clash, Edwina Currie and Neil Hamilton go head-to-head on a very important question, whether the Tories are now a left-wing party. Plus, a trans paedophile has been spared jail after their case was delayed so a decision could be made on whether to house them with male or female inmates. I'll be joined by a furious former Prisons Minister, Anne Widdecombe, to react to that disturbing story in The Outsider. Tomorrow's front page is on the way too, and I'll crown a new Greatest Britain and Union jackass before the night is out. This is Dan Wootton Tonight with me, Mark Dolan, for this week and next. Let's go. You're watching GB News, Britain's news channel, your channel. I'll be dealing with Keir Starmer in just 2 minutes' time. You won't want to miss it. I'm not pulling my punches. But first, the headlines with Polly Middlehurst.
Mark, thank you. Good evening to you. Well, our top story tonight is that the Prime Minister says his thoughts are with the family of an 8-year-old little girl who died today after a Land Rover crashed into her school in southwest London. Police were called to the school just before 10 o'clock this morning. It was the Study Prep School in Wimbledon. 16 people had to be treated at the scene. 10 were taken to hospital. And police are saying the driver was a woman in her 40s. She's been arrested on suspicion of causing death by dangerous driving. Well, with her voice cracking with emotion as she reported the death of the 8-year-old girl to reporters, Detective Chief Superintendent Claire Kellan said the incident wasn't being treated as terror-related.
Officers, along with colleagues from other emergency services, provided first aid to a number of people who had been injured. Very sadly, one of the children, an 8-year-old girl, died at the scene. Our thoughts are with her family at this incredibly difficult time. The driver of a car, a woman aged in her 40s, stopped at the scene and has since been arrested for causing death by dangerous driving and remains in police custody.
Claire Kellan speaking there. Now, the RMT union has announced a strike on the London Underground. Excuse me, its members will stop work from the 23rd to the 28th of July. Those services, we understand, will run on the 24th. They're walking out in a continuing dispute over pensions and working conditions. And the government says it's going to work towards handing over material requested by the COVID inquiry by next week. That's after the Cabinet Office lost its legal challenge over Boris Johnson's unredacted WhatsApp messages. Lawyers for the government had argued the material would be irrelevant. However, the High Court has ruled the inquiry must be given full access. And the government has had to launch today a bid to take its Rwanda deportation policy to the Supreme Court. Last week, the Court of Appeal overturned an earlier High Court ruling which found Rwanda could be considered a safe third country for asylum seekers. And that comes as the House of Lords dealt a blow to the government, rejecting its illegal migration bill. MPs are now having to consider a series of amendments. International news, and Yevgeny Prigozhin, the founder of the Wagner mercenary group, is back in Russia, according to the Belarus leader Alexander Lukashenko. Mr. Lukashenko said the Wagner leader was currently, as his guess was, in St. Petersburg or Moscow, and Russian security services were most likely watching him. Mr. Prigozhin was last seen in public on the 24th of June, leaving Russia after Wagner's attempted coup. Now, the social media platform Threads has had more than 30 million sign-ups today. That's in less than 24 hours of its launch. The new platform, created by Meta, has a text-style format for conversation, which encourages users to post updates and join a public discourse. It looks to take on Elon Musk's Twitter by taking advantage of Instagram's billions of users. You're up to date on TV, online and on the TuneIn app. You're with GB News, Britain's news channel.
Thanks, Polly. It's Mark Dolan in for the great Dan Wootton this week and next. Lovely to have your company. The cervix-free leader of the opposition, Sir Keir Starmer, is back in the news, outlining the fifth of his so-called missions, this one to sort out education. First up, he's going to change the current curriculum to improve pupils' oratory and public speaking. A bit ironic coming from Starmer, whose communication skills are up there with the Elephant Man. The teaching unions responsible, let's not forget, for those disgraceful school closures during the pandemic are delighted with Starmer's proposals, although they press the Labour leader on the issue of investment, which you and I know is a snake oil term, which means more borrowed billions. Are you telling me that Starmer won't give in to the inflation-busting demands of not just the teaching unions, but the doctors, the nurses, the civil servants and everyone else in the public sector? Do me a favour. This is his political constituency. The unions bankroll his party, and they've got him by the short and curlies. I would say they've got him by the balls, but he doesn't have any. Public sector unions will be expecting a cash bonanza when he gets in. And if he doesn't yield to their demands, I predict an all-out war within the soon-to-be governing Labour Party. The teaching unions say they want less testing and fewer exams. In other words, they hate accountability. If they have their way, which under a Labour government, of course they will, academic standards will plummet. And for all our youngsters, it will be a race to the bottom. And Starmer plans to have more focus on creative subjects. Yeah, that's really going to help us compete with China and South Korea, isn't it? With more photography classes. If drama, knitting and cake making don't boost the economy, nothing will. Look, I'm sure Keir Starmer is a decent enough guy with half a brain as well. His decision to scrap the insane idea of spending £28 billion annually on a so-called green revolution reflects the fact that they're getting serious about power. He's pushed back on free school meals, citing the potential cost, and it's hard to argue with his plan of 500,000 more children reaching early learning targets by 2030. But does he really mean any of it, given the fact that he does more U-turns than Maureen from driving school? Have you ever met a Keir Starmer fan? Even his own side don't like him, with Starmer out trending on Twitter regularly. And I'm also worried about Starmer's political judgment. This is a guy that campaigned for Jeremy Corbyn to become Prime Minister, which would have been an economic and national security disaster. He campaigned to reverse Brexit. And he's completely out of touch with the British public with his inability to define what a woman is, even though he's married to one. Another example of his extremely poor judgment is his headline-grabbing plan to end the charitable status of private schools. Clearly red meat for those on the left of his party to keep them happy. Firstly, it's unethical and illogical to tax any academic institutions which seek to educate people, especially ones that do it well. How is that in the national interest? But it's also counterproductive, given the fact that poorer kids will have to leave the private sector. That means the state will pick up the bill for their education. With pressure on school places already, more schools would be needed to be built, more teachers, more costs, negating any income from this policy. It's cultural vandalism, it's spiteful, and it makes no sense. It's pure politics. It's pure Starmer. Shame on Sir Keir for making young people a political football. The only exciting part of today's speech was when Starmer was interrupted by eco-campaigners. Take a listen.
Places barriers, not just economic barriers.
Reinstate your pledge for 28 billion per year.
I gave on the mission on green power. We did that last one. We've done that one. Will you just...
Which side are the Labour Party on?
We are on the side of economic growth. Will you just let me please get on with this? Thank you very much.
Stop making U-turns here.
Thank you. I think they may have missed the fact that the last mission I launched was on clean power by 2030.
Starmer there almost lost for words, a rare blessing for us all. I thought the tone of their protests was interesting. The Green lobby feel they own this guy, so expect many more campaigns of this nature should Starmer enter number 10. Labour have taken over £1.5 million in donations from top businessman Dale Vince, who backs Just Stop Oil. Did this influence Starmer's decision to scrap new oil and gas licences in the North Sea? You tell me. Owned by the unions, owned by the Corbynites and owned by Green fanatics. From day one, Starmer will be in office, but not in power. And Starmer's plans for education won't work. He hasn't done his homework and his sums don't add up. With his talk of his exciting 5 missions, he thinks he's Tom Cruise, but he's more tomfoolery. 5 years of Starmer will be mission impossible. Reacting to my big opinion, my superstar panel tonight, Daily Telegraph columnist Alison Pearson, Conservative peer in waiting, Sean Bailey, and author and broadcaster Amy Nicole Turner. Amy, to you, a shocking display from Starmer today.
I can't see how we can see the world so very differently, Mark. I think this was actually a visionary speech. I think this was inspiring. This is exactly what we want to hear. I think it was a little bit Tony Blair, focusing on investing in education. But then again, he did pull millions of children out of poverty. So I think this is a really great move for Labour, and I think it's going to win a lot of votes.
It's not going to be his education policy, is it? It's the education policy of the teaching unions. These are the teaching unions who disgracefully damaged children by closing schools during the pandemic. And now what they want to do is get rid of testing because they hate accountability. And they want to have creative subjects. So that means media studies degrees and drama and pottery.
That's not exactly accurate reading. I think that there are too many exams. I think what they've done with...
I think there can't be enough exams. I'd like children tested every day if they could.
I don't think...
Because I was a lazy so-and-so at school.
And particularly happy.
When I was at school, I was a lazy so-and-so, and it was only the fear of a test that made me study.
I think you're talking anecdotally there. And I think if we want economic growth, which we're all such big fans of, we need to invest in education first and foremost.
And get rid of testing. Not
get rid of testing, but make it a productive environment for children in the best way that we can.
Like coursework.
And what we've seen recently from the Ofcom scandals is that actually over-testing is detrimental to schools, to children, and surely all we want is social mobility to be able to have a bit of economic growth.
Sorry, I got quite triggered when you said Ofcom. I think you meant Ofsted. Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
Slightly different organisation.
Ofsted. We're no longer...
They tend to come up in conversation here at GB News. Sean, your thoughts about what Keir Starmer's had to say? I mean, he's talking about getting 5-year-olds higher academic standards. That can't be bad, can it?
Let's look at the good and the bad. The good thing is he's focused on education. He's talking about oratory, which is it's important. But the questions I want to ask is, how much more work can we ask teachers to do? Because school standards in the last 10 to 15 years have actually risen quite significantly, but that has been at the expense of some very hard-working teachers. And secondly, who are we going to be speaking like? My worry is this won't just be about how to speak, it'll be what to speak, what to say, what to think. That will be my worry. And let's be clear, schools for many years now, and many outside charities as well, have done lots of great oratory in school. The Jack Petchey Fund does this thing around debating and stuff, which is exactly what I think Keir Starmer is talking about, but it's already happening. He just needs to expand that. But the key thing is this, the left always talk about education as this big social engine. It is not.
It can
the thing that makes the biggest difference to a child's educational performance is their home environment. So if he actually wants children to do better at school, he needs to concentrate on what they're doing at home.
One of the sort of headline policies from Starmer is to axe the charitable status of private schools, which I think is spiteful, and I think it's a self-destructive move. Alison Pearson.
Yeah, because our private schools are sort of jewels in the crown. I mean, people come from abroad to go to our private schools. They're one of our great export, really. And it is nuts, as you said, Mark, in your introduction, because lots of kids, if they put VAT on private school fees, lots of the more modest income families, believe it or not everyone who sends their child to a private school is stinking rich. People forego holidays, people stick with a very old car to be able to, because they care about the education of their children. And lots of those kids will be turning up in state schools, as you said. And
at a cost of up to £10,000 a year, the government may have to build new schools. This could cost billions.
But a lot of people educate their children privately because they're not happy or satisfied with the state system. And if we invested in the state system, maybe private schools wouldn't feel as necessary to the parents that you're talking about.
As Mark pointed out, a lot of
think they go completely hand in hand.
Don't like the tests and the standards that this is why people bail out of the state system, is because they want to go somewhere where rigour and spelling and so on. By the way, Mark, I don't share your sort of cynicism about the teaching children to speak well, present themselves well. We lived in America when my children were little, and in America they basically don't do numeracy and literacy until the kids are about 7 or 8. They teach them to shake the hand of the principal, look me in the eye, good morning, Mr. Dolan. And those kids, that's why whenever there's a disaster in America and you go to the local fire chief and he comes on and he's like Gene Hackman in a film, that's because they've done proper speaking. And it's perfectly true that a lot of working class children don't have that opportunity to learn to speak and present themselves well. And why are we all here on telly? Because we can speak and we can express our opinions. Now, a lot of children from poorer backgrounds don't get that. I also disagree with Sean, because you can't manufacture. I came from a bookless household. I was entirely dependent on my teachers in school, on the school library, for learning, so I think you can't manufacture a better home.
It's a balance.
Schools to be good.
It's a balance. Nobody's saying that we shouldn't teach people to speak. We should. That ability to communicate with people, say your art's important. School is massively important, but for years we've concentrated on school and neglected people's home environment.
No, for 13 years we have not concentrated on school.
If you speak to teachers, they will tell you the big mountain they have to climb is a child's home environment. If you come from a house that respects education, tries to support education, things work out much better in school.
Yes, teachers shouldn't be chefs, they shouldn't be social workers,
they shouldn't be
doctors and shrinks and all the rest of it.
But they should probably be paid properly.
Amy, briefly then, what about the unions inflation-busting wage demands. How's that going to be paid for?
I think you could probably start by actually discussing it with the unions rather than just avoiding it, which is what's led to the actual strike days. You start bargaining and looking at why they have the pay demands. And I think the pay demands, they just want to be paid what they were in 2008.
And could you live with higher inflation and more national debt for future generations to fulfil their demands? Is that acceptable?
No.
Is that ethical?
Why do I think you see spending it very differently? You see it
well,
as
it's
just,
inflationary, isn't it?
No, you
and
see
it goes
like
on the
that.
national
Whereas
debt.
I see it quite differently. I see it as an investment.
Well, you can see it however you like, but the country's broke. We've got £2 trillion worth of national debt, thanks to lockdowns that the left wanted so enthusiastically. Well, you've had those. Now the economy's wrecked. Where's the money going to come from?
Investing in things and creating individuals, and then those children can go on
for more borrowed billions.
All right, well, don't have a productive workforce then.
The challenge for Starmer will be who does he pick?
OK.
Who wins out of his pay rises and who doesn't get one?
Listen, let me tell you that millions would agree with Amy Nicole-Turner that actually our teachers have the most important job in society and they should be paid properly to do it. So what do you think? Let me know, Dan at gbnews.com. Alison Pearson, Sean Bailey and Amy Nicole-Turner return in just a few minutes. Coming up, top journalist and friend of the Queen, Petronella Wyatt, gives her unfiltered take on Prince Harry choosing America over Britain. That's right, he went to US Independence Day celebrations over his father's Scottish coronation. So does the sulking Duke now see himself as American? Petronella is live in the studio and she's dropping some truth bombs. But next up in The Clash, respected Sunday Telegraph editor Alistair Heath reckons 13 years of Tory rule has lurched Britain radically to the left. So are the Tories now a left-wing party? Neil Hamilton and Edwina Currie do battle on the Conservative identity crisis. Let me know what you think, Dan at gbnews.com, or tweet us at gbnews and vote in the poll.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m, and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Dan Wootton. You can watch me live on GB News Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. And did you know that you can also watch and listen live on our website, gbnews.com. You'll always be up to date on the latest breaking news, as well as enjoying the best stories, opinions and shows. You can even join the debate under our live player as you're watching. So head straight to gbnews.com on TV, radio and online. GB News, Britain's news channel.
And online.
Mark Dolan in for Dan Wootton this week and next. Lovely to have your company. Royal insider and friend of the Queen's, Petronella Wyatt, coming up, but it's time now for The Clash. The Sunday Telegraph's editor Alistair Heath has written in a column, 13 years of Tory failure have shifted Britain radically to the left. He added the Tories, under 5 prime ministers since 2010, have failed to make Britain more conservative. On almost every metric, we've become more socialist, woke and collectivist. Just last week, we saw the formation of the New Conservatives, the latest backbench insurgent group, who are demanding the government starts to take seriously its pledge to drastically cut immigration. That's before you get to lowering taxes and the so-called culture wars. And last month, fed-up figures on the right fought for the soul of the party as they gathered for 2 major conferences. But are they fighting a losing battle? Indeed, are the Tories now just a left-wing party? Let me know your thoughts, Dan at gbnews.com, or tweet us at gbnews. And it's also subject to our text poll today. We'll get you the results of that very shortly. But to debate this, I'm delighted to welcome 2 former legends of the Conservative movement. The leader of UKIP and ex-Tory MP Neil Hamilton, and former Conservative government minister and best-selling author Edwina Currie. Neil Hamilton, are the Tories now a left-wing party?
Yes, of course they are. And what can we point to in the last 13 years of Conservative government, which is recognisably conservative? You know, immigration is completely out of control. Forget about the small boats coming across the channel. Net migration, which was legal last year, was over 600,000. And we've added 4 million to our population through immigration alone under this Conservative government. They've doubled the national debt. We've got the highest tax burden since the Attlee government immediately after the war. Inflation is at a 40-year high. This year alone, they've raised business taxes by a third. Corporation tax went up from 18% to 25%. Eco-lunacy is running rampant through the country. Energy prices are at least a quarter more than they need to be because of green taxes, which are supposed to save the planet, but all they do is actually cost the earth. I could go on and on and on. What have the Conservative Party done to take on the woke onslaught upon our basic freedoms in this country? Almost nothing. They've done nothing to deliver on Brexit, the huge corpus of legislation which we opposed as ministers, and I was a member, as Edwina was, of the Council of Ministers in Brussels for several years. We opposed lots of details in European Union measures. Nothing has been done to row back on those measures that were imposed upon us against our will. On so many measures, this Conservatives utterly failed to live up to its name as a Conservative party.
Edwina Currie, Chinese-style lockdowns, the highest taxes since the Second World War, a woke takeover of our institutions, and the maniacal pursuit of net zero. Doesn't sound very conservative to me.
Well, I don't know about that because I remember paying over 40% as a basic rate of tax when Margaret Thatcher got elected. And was able to start reducing it. So if you're talking about higher rates of tax and taxable income coming in, it's partly because we have a much, much bigger economy and we need to do something to reduce that national debt, or at least get it under control. You can't have it both ways. Now, there are lots of things that I want to change, and one of them is to change the mindset of the nation at large, which has got a bit too used to the government doing everything. You've heard me say this before. Governments can't do everything. In fact, governments don't do most things at all well. But this government has been learning, and it's been learning quite fast. So, for example, the price cap that we've seen on energy has just dropped by about a third. That's good. I think we'll get to a stage when we don't need that at all. It has refused to start helping mortgage holders, basing the idea, I think quite rightly, on the notion that actually if we're going to get inflation down, we have to, all of us, try and change our behaviour and stop buying high-priced things and be more canny with our money. It has refused to hand anything over to the strikers, and that's been very good indeed, because the strikes that have already been settled have been settled at about a half to 2/3 of inflation, which in itself will come down. And I don't know if Neil has noticed, but as a result, the international view of our economy has steadily got more optimistic. We are seeing a certain amount of growth. The pound has risen since September last year from $1 and I think it was $1.03 or something like that, up to about $1.27. So our money is buying an awful lot more. There's a lot more to do and a lot more to go ahead. People during COVID got used to turning to the government for all advice, all instruction, and lost their sense of responsibility. That, I think, has to come back, and the quicker the government encourages that, the better.
Briefly, Edwina, if you can, the issue is these insurgent parties. So you've got Reform UK, you've got UKIP, increasingly popular, Richard Tice, Neil Hamilton, a threat to the Tories at the next election. And why are they there? Because this Conservative government is not representing viewers and listeners to this programme who consider themselves proper, traditional Conservatives. Those people feel politically homeless, and it's the fault of the last several Tory leaders.
Well, with all due respect to them, if they want a Labour government, perhaps they are going the right way towards it. And I personally do not want a Labour government. I know that the way our political system works, which we've had for many centuries, is to squeeze out the small parties. They are wasting their time. Perhaps they're just natural contrarians. I mean, the fact there's so many little fringe parties tells you they're not very good at agreeing with anybody, are they? They're all basically members of a party of one. That's certainly been true since Neil Hamilton left the Tory party a very, very long time ago. No, look, we have to work together. The big parties, the Conservative Party, is a very broad umbrella.
OK.
And people are very, very welcome, and we'd like to see them back. We want to see them working to make sure we don't get the socialists in power.
Neil Hamilton, we've got a slight technical issue, which is that your face is out of focus. The lampshade behind you is in focus, but it's what you say that really matters anyway. And thank you for joining us. I think you're abroad at the moment. It's lovely to have you on the programme, and Edwina, of course.
I where I am today by my looks.
Well, there you go. That's exactly right. Now, listen, Neil, briefly again, if you can. The clock's against us. But what do you make of Edwina's rather sniffy comments about smaller parties like UKIP and Reform UK?
Well, you know, there's no point in arguing that. I mean, what we're talking about here is whether the Conservative Party is truly a Conservative Party and worth voting for. I mean, what is going to be the difference between a Starmer government and the Conservative government we currently got? As I said, the indictment that I put out at the start of this segment today was, you know, we've got immigration completely out of control. We've got taxes at a 60-year high, inflation a 40-year high, business taxes have gone up by a third this year alone. And these are not Conservative policies. We've got green lunacy running rampant. You know, we've effectively destroyed our energy independence because of high taxes, windfall taxes on oil companies in developments in the North Sea, and reliance upon intermittent sources like wind and solar, whilst we closed down our coal industry. Energy prices have gone through the roof. So all our high energy intensive industries have been sent overseas. And we're importing these products like steel, glass, aluminium and so on from China, India and elsewhere. You know, this is the result of 13 years of a so-called Conservative government. If you keep on voting for these policies, these are the policies you're going to get. So if you can't get them from a Conservative government, don't vote for it.
OK, listen, you're a gentleman, Neil. I'm a gentleman. Edwina, you get the last word.
He's an old Neanderthal, isn't he? He's not going to win any votes, and he knows it.
What an outrageous thing to say. Edwina, great to have you on the programme. We'll catch up soon. Former Conservative Government Minister, best-selling author Edwina Currie, and the leader of UKIP and his lampshade, live from Menorca. Neil, I do hope that Christine hasn't finished all the sangria. Thanks for joining us from your holiday villa. Brilliant stuff. Oh, to be a fly on the wall in that hotel. Who do you agree with? Are the Tories now a left-wing party? Sean on Twitter says yes, the Tories are so left-wing, they're into the Green agenda. Paul on Twitter says no, I just think they're now more centre-right as opposed to right-wing. They've definitely shifted closer to the centre, though. Gaz says, I don't know how to answer this. They're a bit of a nothing party these days. Unfortunately, though, so are Labour, so we're screwed either way. And your verdict is in. Are the Tories now a left-wing party? 75% say yes, they are, and 25% say no, they are not. Coming up after a trans prisoner has their sentencing delayed over confusion about whether to send them to a male or female prison, tough-talking former Tory minister Anne Widdecombe gives her take on whether Rishi Sunak needs to introduce swift legislation to stop such madness ever happening again. But next, the Queen's friend, Petronella Wyatt, weighs in on treacherous Prince Harry choosing to celebrate US Independence Day over his father's Scottish coronation. She'll also get stuck into the Duke's woke pal, President Joe Biden, as we ask, does the pensioner-in-chief hate Great Britain? I think you know the answer. See you in 2.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard. We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often there will be difficult stories, stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison? I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views, and often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Now, Prince Harry boldly underlined his retirement from the royal family this week, skipping his father's Scottish coronation to celebrate the 4th of July in Montecito. It seems he's even forgotten he's British. The disgraced Duke was snapped hours before his father's big day, taking his daughter Lilibet to a US Independence Day parade in California. Harry's latest snub comes as no surprise after he only paid lip service to the King's official coronation earlier this year. But is this the surest sign yet that Harry now sees himself as an American? Is he a traitor? To debate this, I'm delighted to welcome royal insider Petronella Wyatt. It's another sad story, isn't it?
Well, we have to say, Mark, he's had no success as an Englishman, so he's having a go as an American. But it is very, very telling because he has no intention of ever coming back here. And he's burnt all his bridges, and he's got an American wife, children who are American citizens, will be brought up as Americans. I think he's now trying to personify the sort of American dream and sort of cut it as kind of humble guy as opposed to this Brit in royal exile, which hasn't worked that well. It isn't working anymore. This may well be a new tactic for him.
Yes, he's bet the house on being popular in America, but Hollywood is so cutthroat. He's a brave man, isn't he?
Brave is a kind word. I would have said foolhardy. The thing is, if you've been in that royal hothouse for 30-odd years, the real world, even if it's the kindest of real worlds like GB News, is going to be tough. But to think you can then go to Hollywood and make it there when they'd sooner cut your throat than give you $5. And they really don't give a damn about titles. Americans don't care about that thing anymore. A few of them do.
No, and Hollywood's all about the next project, isn't it? So movie stars like Tom Cruise, yes, he's rich, yes, he's famous, but it's all about the next movie.
And it's all about now. It's
And what's next for Harry? He's told his life story. We've had the Netflix series, we've had the book, we've had the podcast.
But there are 2 more books to come. He's contracted to write 2 more
What's going to be in them?
Well, I have no idea.
Crayons, drawings, I don't know.
But the thing is that he's going to get the shock of his life if this happens, because his publishers are pretty ruthless too. And if he produces proposals they don't like, he'll have to give back the money.
Wow, that sounds pretty brutal.
It'll be a massive sum.
Is he happy?
It's very difficult to say.
Body language, the mood music.
He's trying so hard to look happy.
Right.
He's a bit like an actor on a stage. Pretending to be a happy person or a drunk. It isn't quite right. It's a bit exaggerated, isn't it?
You've said he'll never come back to this country again. However, if things were not to work out with Meghan, and of course we hope they stay together, they've got kids and all the rest of it, we don't want to break up the royal marriage.
We don't want to make 3 people unhappy. If they broke up, there'd be at least 2 other people who'd be made unhappy, the people they'd then hook up with.
Exactly. It's a tragic sort of domino effect. But if things were to not work out between Harry and Meghan, and Paul Burrell, who knows Harry better than most, he said, I give that marriage 10 years, and they're already several years into it. So it could just be a matter of time before they were to move on from each other. Wouldn't Meghan be a natural fall guy? Couldn't he come back to the UK going, it was all her fault?
He could, but remember, what would happen to the children? Because they're the American custody laws. And also, the relations between him and William are so atrocious. Let's say, and I hope this won't happen, but let's say in 10 years' time, William was king. Or in 15 years, I cannot see Harry coming back to Britain when his brother is king.
Well, yes, if you're going to pick a fight with anyone, don't make it the next monarch, the next king of the United Kingdom. Can we talk about America? We've talked about Hollywood and California and the Sussexes. We understand that Joe Biden has overruled Ben Wallace as NATO chief. Is this proof that Biden hates Britain?
Well, I've always thought Biden hated Britain, and he's been very eloquent about it. Or not very eloquent, because he isn't eloquent, but I think he hates us more than any president since Madison, and that was in 1812 when Madison declared war on us, so it's pretty bad. I mean, the special relationship used to be a legend, and now it's a myth, frankly. No, I think he's so partisan. I mean, going back to NATO appointment, it's quite shocking because we're one of the few countries that actually keep up our military commitments. And this is such a huge slap in the face.
And we stepped up in relation to Ukraine.
Exactly, we were pivotal.
Ben Wallace showed amazing leadership.
We were pivotal, and also, in a way, it's our turn. This is not the way an ally behaves, frankly.
No, and the alternative now is Ursula von der Leyen, OK, who is the EU Commission chief, who threatened to erect a hard border between the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland over vaccines. What does that woman know about peace?
Oh, no, but she's also a failed German defence minister. She couldn't even raise enough money to provide guns for the German army.
Yeah.
I mean, it's dismal.
Well, she's running
But Biden is a shocker.
Yeah.
Absolute shocker.
Too right. Hard to disagree. Petronella, dropping truth bombs as ever. Broadcaster and writer Petronella Wyatt. Do come and see us again soon. Coming up, Just Stop Oil have disrupted the cricket, rugby and now Wimbledon. And today, ridiculously, they warned people that they would boil in their own sweat as a result of climate change. How's that possible? But as their persistent campaign rumbles on, will the eco-terrorists prove to be on the right side of history? My superstar panel gets stuck into that big debate shortly. But next, a paedophile trans prisoner's sentencing is delayed over confusion about whether to send the biological male to a men's or women's prison. What a time to be alive. So does Rishi Sunak need to take drastic action to change the law and stop this madness from ever happening again? Former Tory minister Anne Widdecombe is riled and ready on this in mere moments.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference. And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison? I don't believe in prison.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Weeknights on GB News from 6 p.m. You'll always get drama.
Please stop, Michelle.
I know, yeah.
Please stop.
Should I just shut up?
Romance.
You like me, I like you. There you go.
There you are. Well, don't tell anybody.
Adventure.
Etc.
That's the whole point. But
and action.
Sergeant, read my superstar panel. They're already at it. They're fighting. It's going to be quite a show.
Only on GB News. Britain's watching.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Who is Professor Matthew Goodwin? Well, he's the rock star academic that's launching an anti-woke movement. He's released a video. It's broken the internet. Millions agree with his wise words. He's on the show later. Find out about his remarkable project, which, by the way, the elite absolutely hate, which is why he must prevail. But it's time now for Big Witty Style with former Conservative government minister, prisons minister no less, Anne Widdecombe. And a transgender paedophile has been spared a jail sentence after a delay caused by their gender. 66-year-old former prison worker Tanya Howes was caught with hundreds of indecent images of children, including almost 40 in the most serious category A, which guidelines suggest should carry a custodial sentence of between 6 months and 3 years. But after a lengthy delay in sentencing caused by confusion over whether Howes should be sent to a male or female prison, they'll now be sent to no prison at all, with the judge issuing a suspended sentence instead. These offences would normally attract immediate custody, Magistrate Ian Taylor told the sex offender on Tuesday. However, because of the time lag and because probation feel that they can rehabilitate you, it's going to be an unusual sentence because we're going to suspend it. And you are a former prisons minister yourself. With another example of transgender criminals benefiting from our woke system, does Rishi Sunak need to tighten the rules?
Well, certainly in this case, I think Suella Braverman needs to tighten the rules. Now, it's perfectly possible to have special units. We have them for disabled prisoners. There used to be a time when Kingston Prison, not now, but it was devoted to older prisoners. You can always create special units. And now that we're getting this problem increasingly, it seems to me that that's what you do. Now, as far as I'm concerned, a man who has still got male genitalia is still a man and shouldn't be anywhere near a women's prison. It's quite wrong from the women's point of view that he should be there. But if he is going to be given a hard time in a male prison because he is effectively half woman, because although he hasn't changed everything, that is how he's identifying, then OK, special unit is the answer to that. Now, what the answer is not is for somebody who's had category A images. And let's be very clear about this, Mark. It isn't just a question of looking at child porn. That porn has got to be created, and it's being created using a child. There are enormous numbers of children who are abused for the pleasure of perverts. And there should never be a case where a category A offence is met with a suspended sentence. Now, I understand, all the problems that the magistrates had. I mean, what were they supposed to do? But nevertheless, the answer is a special unit.
A huge miscarriage of justice for the victims involved, Anne.
Well, yes, as I say, those children actually are hurt. I know a lot of people think, well, if you're just looking at pictures, you aren't doing anything wrong. But you are, because those children had to give those pictures in the first place, had to do the things that are necessary to create those pictures and videos, indeed, and videos, horrible things being done. Therefore, as I say, category A should not go unpunished, which is effectively what has happened here.
Well, I know my viewers and listeners will be appalled by this story. You are a former Home Office minister. Prisons was your brief. I think you took pride in the fact that you visited every prison in the country. You were proactive and widely admired in your role. What's your overview about the culture of Britain's prisons in 2023?
Well, I don't think it's great. I think there's quite serious overcrowding, and every time there's overcrowding, what happens is that you get a drop in purposeful activity.
Anne, can I interrupt you? Anne, is your phone ringing? Is that Richard Tice?
I'm terribly sorry. That's my cuckoo clock, I'm afraid. And I wasn't quite expecting to be going on this long. That's my cuckoo clock.
And I didn't think there was anything...
Don't worry about it.
I didn't think there was anything cuckoo about you. Can I just say, why does your cuckoo clock go off at 9:53?
Probably because I haven't programmed it recently.
OK, well, listen, you make a lot of sense. The cuckoo doesn't, but you do. But so, Anne, yes, we were just talking about how prisons have changed since you ran them.
Indeed. Well, first of all, they're quite badly overcrowded. When prisons are overcrowded, what I was saying was that the first casualty is rehabilitation, because the staff are deployed onto security, onto managing the flows of prisoners and managing people who are going out to prison and to court and all the rest of it. So purposeful activity, which is to say education and training and workshops, they always decline whenever there is an overcrowding situation. And frankly, it's no good just opening up the gates, shoving prisoners in, and then after a couple of years, opening up the gates and calling them out. If you haven't done anything with them in between times, they just go straight back to where they came from and carry on as before.
And
our recidivism rate is huge.
It's interesting. I totally agree with you. Prisons should be constructive because we want to rehabilitate people. We want them to make a contribution to society. And as you'll know, the excellent Timpson chain of key cutters and shoe repairers employ ex-cons, and they go on to have great careers and make a great contribution. So it's possible, isn't it? And some people in prison are hugely talented and have great potential.
Yes, sorry, I lost you then, so I'm not quite sure what you said before that. It's true,
you didn't miss much.
Some are not at all talented. Some can't even read and write. In fact, as many as 75% sometimes haven't got normal standards of literacy. So they're not at all talented, but you can use that time in prison if they're there for more than a few months. You can use that time to get them fully literate and fully numerate. You can use the time.
Anne, you are a person of deep political conviction and you are somebody of deep faith as well. As somebody of faith, as a practicing Christian, how do you feel about this trans ideology, the idea that a man is a woman is a man, you can change your biological sex? Can I just ask you from a spiritual point of view what you think of this idea?
No, I don't believe that I certainly don't believe that you can become a man or a woman just by wishing it, just by saying I am a man or I am a woman. There is a vanishingly small number of people who genuinely do suffer from dysphoria and who go through very painful and prolonged procedures. And I'm quite happy to recognise them as the sex that they have changed to. But God made man and he made woman. And it just seems to me in just pure biological terms, women have completely different biological equipment from men, and you can't therefore say that the one is the other. They're simply not.
And always a treat to have you on the show. We'll see you on Sunday night for Mark Dolan tonight. Former government minister, best-selling author and television personality, owner of a very loud cuckoo clock, Anne Widdecombe. Brilliant stuff. Well, look, folks, coming up, he's the centre-right academic who's broken the internet with a rallying cry to get Britain fighting back against the woke mind virus. Best-selling author Professor Matthew Goodwin joins me live in the studio with his battle plan to get Britain booming. Of course, the elites hate his book and they hate his plan, which is why he must prevail. But next, Just Stop Oil marked a new low today with an absurd prediction on GB News that people would boil in their own sweat because of so-called climate change. But after warning they're going to target even more sporting events in coming weeks, are they on the right side of history? All that plus tomorrow's newspaper front pages with our superstar panel. So, folks, keep those emails coming. It is dan@gbnews.com. It's great to have your company. Mark Dolan in for the boss, Dan Wootton. All weekend, by the way, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and next week as well. Great to have your company. You can also catch up on my monologue at GB News on Twitter. A busy hour to come. Don't go anywhere.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
It's 10 o'clock. This is Dan Wootton Tonight with me, Mark Dolan. This week and next, lovely to have your company. Busy hour to come. They've been compared to the suffragettes and have disrupted the rugby, cricket and Wimbledon, but with absurd warnings like this today from Just Stop Oil.
When the temperature gets hot enough, for example, when it gets so hot that the sweat no longer cools you down, you literally boil in your own sweat.
You boil in your own sweat? Are we right to mock the middle-class eco-terrorists? Or are they on the right side of history? That's the big debate coming up with my superstar panel tonight. Alison Pearson, Sean Bailey and Amy Nicole-Turner. Despite their juvenile antics, Just Stop Oil seem to be earning sympathy from surprising quarters.
Our hope is that somewhere higher up will start to make a difference.
Holly Willoughby, ladies and gents, who last week took a 136-mile gas-guzzling helicopter ride to Glastonbury for a boozy weekend. Fleet Street legend Kelvin MacKenzie weighs in on that. Plus, a frankly shameful scene, footage of an attack on GB News' female advertising chief by a bunch of foul-mouthed male lovies at a TV industry event. Kelvin's uncancelled later. Meanwhile, a centre-right academic launches an impassioned bid for a new anti-woke community.
I know how this new elite think and feel and what they believe. And I've become convinced that millions of people out there think the same as me. They're utterly fed up with the status quo.
You've got to hear this guy. He is a genius. Professor Matthew Goodwin outlines his battle plans to defeat the woke mind virus. The elite hate him, which is why he must prevail. Matthew Goodwin, live in the studio later this hour. Don't miss it. And a pioneering British businessman is up for a gong in tonight's Great Britain and also Union Jackass. Can you guess who? I'll reveal all before the show is out. Plus, tomorrow's front page is first. At the start of a busy and lively hour, Holly Middlehurst.
Apologies, we've got some breaking news and I've just got to cross it, so let me just stick my microphone on and bring this to you straight away. It's concerning the events around Buckingham Palace tonight in central London. You may remember earlier on we brought you news that cordons were in place around Buckingham Palace after a man handcuffed himself to the main gates earlier on this evening. Scotland Yard said the man began threatening to harm himself as officers approached him. Obviously, they had to clear people away from those gates that you can see there if you're watching on television. situation. The situation we can report to you now from our editor, political editor, security editor, beg your pardon, Mark White. He says the situation is still ongoing and officers have still been negotiating with the man, but it is reported in the last half hour or so he has harmed himself. He's sustained a number of self-inflicted slash injuries, is the way that Mark is putting it. Police say they are still working to contain that situation and bring it to a safe end as quickly as possible. So that news just coming to us and catching me out a little bit at the beginning of that bulletin. Now, to carry on with today's news, the sad news that the Prime Minister says his thoughts are with the family of an 8-year-old girl who died today after a Land Rover crashed into a primary school in southwest London. Police were called just before 10 o'clock this morning to the Study Prep School in Wimbledon. 16 people, we understand, were treated at the scene. 10 were taken to hospital. Police say the driver, a woman in her 40s, has been arrested on suspicion of causing death by dangerous driving. Detective Chief Superintendent Claire Kelland, her voice cracking with emotion as she spoke to reporters about the death of the child, says the incident isn't being treated as terror-related.
Officers, along with colleagues from other emergency services, provided first aid to a number of people who had been injured. Very sadly, one of the children, an 8-year-old girl, died at the scene. Our thoughts are with her family at this incredibly difficult time. The driver of a car, a woman aged in her 40s, stopped at the scene and has since been arrested for causing death by dangerous driving and remains in police custody.
Now, the RMT union announced today a strike on the London Underground. Its members will stop work from the 23rd to the 28th of July. Those services, we understand, running on the 24th. They're walking out in a continuing dispute over pensions and working conditions. The government has said today it's going to work towards handing over material requested by the COVID inquiry next week. That's after the Cabinet Office lost its legal challenge over Boris Johnson's unredacted WhatsApp messages. Lawyers for the government had argued the material would be irrelevant. However, the High Court has ruled the inquiry must be given full access. And the government has launched a bid to take its Rwanda deportation policy to the Supreme Court. Last week, the Court of Appeal overturning an earlier High Court ruling which found Rwanda could be considered a safe third country for asylum seekers. And that comes as the House of Lords dealt a blow to the government, rejecting its illegal migration bill. MPs now considering a series of amendments. Now, another bit of breaking news for you this evening concerning the new online conversation thread platform, which is built by the owners of Facebook. It's called Threads. It's received a cease and desist letter from Twitter less than 24 hours after it launched, according to media reports swirling around tonight. The new app by parent company Meta features a conversation format which encourages users to post updates and join the public discourse. It looks to take on Elon Musk's Twitter by taking advantage of Instagram's billions of users to which it's linked. Threads had more than 30 million sign-ups in the first day. That's the news. You're up to date on TV, online, DAB+ radio and the TuneIn app. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
My thanks to Polly. We'll keep you updated on that palace story with news as and when it comes in. Tomorrow's news tonight in our Media Buzz. Let's kick off with our very first look at the front pages. Hot off the press. Metro, horror at the school tea party. A devastating story. Woman is arrested as girl 8 killed in end-of-term tragedy. Unimaginable story. A girl of 8 has died after a 4x4 slammed into pupils at an end-of-term tea party on the lawn outside a school. Devastation is not the word. There are no words. The Independent run with that story as well. Girl 8 killed as car ploughs into prep school playground. Woman in 40s arrested after Land Rover crashes into pupils. You can just only imagine what the families are going through at this time. Shocking. Now, let's get to the big stories of the day with my superstar panel. Daily Telegraph columnist Alison Pearson, Conservative peer in waiting Sean Bailey, and author and broadcaster freshly married with a lovely, posh, long name, Amy Nicole Turner.
I can't get used to it. And earlier you addressed me and you asked me a question, but I thought you were just...
Didn't know who she was.
I was like, who's he talking to?
That's right.
So I do apologise for that slightly incoherent
Mr. Turner will be very worried. Now, the Great Unwashed seem determined to spoil Britain's summer as Just Stop Oil protesters twice disrupted play at Wimbledon yesterday. Other recent protests by the infuriating eco-loons have also targeted the World Snooker Championship, the Rugby Premiership Final and the Ashes Cricket Series at Lords. And today, their leading donor, Dale Vince, has promised to continue spoiling high-profile sports events, admitting it's all about how many headlines they can grab. Vince just so happens to be the owner of League Two football club Forest Green Rovers, and I bet he'd change his tune pretty quickly if their matches were disrupted. Just to highlight the level of intelligence we're dealing with here, take a look at what Just Stop Oil mouthpiece Alex de Cornung had to say to Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce earlier today.
We all want British people to live a good, healthy life. We don't want 1,700 people dropping dead over 2 days.
Where did they get it from?
How did climate kill these people?
Okay, so there's a variety of different factors, right? In this case, it was because of the extreme heats. People died from heat stroke. When the temperature gets hot enough, for example, when it gets so hot that the sweat no longer cools you down, you literally boil in your own sweat. I know that sounds like complete exaggeration.
It does, actually.
When it gets...
I'm afraid it does sound like exaggeration.
Comedy gold, I've got to say. And by the way, Bev and Andrew, back on Monday. It is the very best mid-morning show you'll find on British TV. Alison Pearson, are the climate sceptics the real dinosaurs? And are Just Stop Oil on the right side of history?
Very much not on the right side of history. I mean, I don't know if everyone's noticed that the weather forecast recently, they cannot wait, can they, for these apocalyptic, the hottest June ever, you know, and you think, yeah, but we had the wettest March for 40 years, but they never mention that.
Yes.
No, I think it's...
By the way, it's freezing at the moment.
By the way, it's absolutely, yeah. So, you know, but the BBC weather map gets redder and more orange, doesn't it? We used to just have little suns poking out, and now we've got this flashing apocalypse signs. But no, Mark, I definitely think that, you know, absolutely on the wrong side of history. If we look across Europe, most of the governments of Europe now are rowing back in a quite embarrassed way from these targets. Germany has been lobbying the EU over not getting to electric cars. Volkswagen has halved electric car production. Even President Macron is saying that the EU green regulations have to be reined in because they're anti-competitive. And guess what? They're costing jobs. So everywhere we look now, we see people realising that net zero is unreachable, unaffordable. And our country, of course, has actually had a target enshrined in law, 2050. Completely bonkers. And I'm very, very annoyed about it, actually, because this country's already been shooting itself in the foot with lockdown, and now it's going to shoot itself in the head with net zero. So I think they're really not winning people over, not just spoil sports, but sports spoils, aren't they? You know, they're, ruining people's fun. I think just people think they're absolutely ridiculous. I don't think anyone looks at them on a court at Wimbledon and thinks, oh, they're making a profound point about the planet. You just think, get them off with their ludicrous orange, confetti, don't they? Can I just say that Amy was a great supporter of Just Stop Oil until the weekend and quite fancied Dale Vince, but when she got married, the Just Stop Oil protesters stopped her members of her wedding party getting to the wedding reception. So now we've been inconvenienced ourselves.
Those luxury beliefs can be quite expensive.
The luxury beliefs.
May I just correct the record there? I can't feel the things I felt for Dale Vince because I'm a married woman now.
Yes, of course.
And it is true that Just Stop Oil did impact my wedding day because the Piccadilly line was slightly delayed, but it didn't make me stop supporting their cause. It really didn't, and it won't. And I've actually met and spoke to Alex, and I think Alex has a completely valid point because Alex knows his stuff. I think he's
boiling our own sweat.
He's studying a PhD in climate science, or he's definitely
Prince Andrew is going to be the only survivor, isn't he, of the heat wave?
The thing is, with the climate change will have a massive impact. It is having a massive impact, and to deny that is to agree with point one of science.
Amy, I don't deny. Amy,
to agree with 99% of science.
Amy, I'm no climate change denier. I think temperatures are rising, although it's open to debate. But that looks to be the direction of travel. However, Britain can't afford to bet the house on flaky renewables.
We've just had the hottest day on
Do you care to address my point? Care to answer my question?
Renewables.
Britain can't afford to bet the house on flaky renewables. Germany have had 10 years of investment in renewables. They've spent hundreds of billions, and they've been reliant on Vladimir Putin's oil and gas.
Did you guess what? You just answered your own question then. So do you want me to answer it, or do you just want to
Germany is a terrible test case for renewables.
I think a terrible test case would be not having energy security. Renewables will give us energy security.
No, they will
and
not.
It would lower
Well, it hasn't worked for Germany. Why are Germany... Okay, can I ask you a simple question?
It's actually a legally binding net zero, which was a Conservative policy supported by Labour. So across the board has popular appeal with everyone.
I've acknowledged...
Except for this channel.
I've acknowledged we may have climate change, and there's a healthy debate to have about how to tackle it. But Germany has spent 10 years investing in these renewables, and they're about to grant licences for new coal mines on German soil.
To make more steel.
We're not going to be weaning ourselves off fossil fuels until the end of the century, probably. That's the reality.
Look, hold on. Here's the thing.
No new licences. This was a Labour manifesto pledge. It's hardly a radical idea.
Here's the thing. It actually is a radical idea because it'll stop an industry going. But here's the thing. The first thing is just stop oil on the wrong side of people. History will be written by everyone. It's on the wrong side of people, all people. To disrupt the goings-on of millions of people to make a point doesn't bring them on side. I believe that there's something going on with our climate. Yes, it's something we need to look at, but disrupting Wimbledon or the Cup final doesn't make me warm to supporting you.
You love the chaos a bit, though.
It simply doesn't. And what they need to do is figure out they are stopping people from working, they're stopping people from their leisure time, and that means people won't listen to them. And the other piece as well, we need to be realistic about how we're going to get to this golden land of renewables. Yes, we should use renewables, but we can't do it tomorrow morning because the cost will kill us long before the climate change. Well, yes, they are.
No,
2030 in the terms of a nation is tomorrow. That's why you see Europe, you see Germany, France, everybody rowing back on it because it's virtually impossible to do that.
Amy?
What these people should be doing is thinking how we're actually going to do it, not just bullying us. And the last thing I'll say, there's this idea that they know better than the rest of us. We don't want to boil to death or freeze to death, but they're actually preventing us having a decent conversation because they're doing it in such an extreme way.
Well, this guy's talking about how you'll boil to death in your own sweat, so these characters know nothing about science.
I think he's talking about the number of people that died last summer because of the extreme heat.
A disputed figure. This 40 degrees, that was like for 10 seconds at Heathrow Airport.
But people died last summer because of the heat, and that will increase.
More people have been saved because of energy, because of coal-fired energy. More people have been kept alive than have ever been killed by heat.
So
people are no longer killed by coal.
OK, in that case, Amy, if you think that we should have renewables, are you happy to have less spending on schools, less spending on the NHS, less spending on policing? Do you want higher taxes?
How you are dealing completely with
how are you going to pay for this?
Short-termism. And I always strikes me how you are obsessed with getting me to cost things. And you
yes, I am.
Because the reality is it does have a cost. Look, nobody's saying we don't want renewables. Nobody's saying we don't want to get things right.
To the fossil fuel
but the point is
that's a pretty big
but they're asking for billions in subsidies for green fuel.
Yeah, and that's investment.
But the money has to come from somewhere, and when you take it from somebody suffers. In this case, hundreds of thousands of people who work in the industry.
The renewables are not going to give us... you want to keep using your laptop. You're not going to be able to use your laptop if you're reliant on solar and wind power. This is the fact. This is the basic fact. There is no storage invented yet to store the energy.
Which is exactly a good argument for the green levy, so that we can invest in research.
That's an argument
invest in technology that doesn't exist
That's an argument for nuclear power, actually.
You don't jump out of an aeroplane and say...
You have no money to invest in.
Amy, last word. Why should we make ourselves poorer to save the planet whilst China burn fossil fuels for fun? What is the point in this so-called leadership whilst we shiver in our homes?
Encouraging the planet to start smoking. Like, it's not really good for your health. In the long term, if you give up smoking, then you're going to be healthier.
OK, brilliant stuff. Look, there you go. It's all about opinions, this show. We love Amy Nicole Turner, Sean Bailey and Alison Pearson.
I can't get on board.
Because they are the dream team tonight. What we love about the show is that people don't agree, and I'm sure you agree and don't agree based upon who you've been listening to, so let me know your thoughts. It is Dan at gbnews.com. Coming up, a London theatre finally held its controversial black-only production last night, away from what organisers called the white gaze.
How are black people treated unfairly in theatre? Can you give some examples?
Oh, I'm not here to go into that now because this is a very casual interview outside of another event.
So is this kind of policy progressive or racist? My superstar panel gets stuck into that in the media buzz shortly. And next, he's the centre-right academic who's broken the internet with a rallying cry to get Britain fighting back against the madness of wokeism. Best-selling author Professor Matthew Goodwin joins me live in the studio with his battle plan in just a few moments. You won't want to miss his incredible ideas.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard.
We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think. Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often they will be difficult stories, stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to the show. Mark Dolan in for Dan Wootton this week and next. Mark Dolan tonight returns tomorrow as well with all of your favourite elements, the big opinion and my take at 10. Kelvin McKenzie joins me shortly to let rip at the male TV thugs who targeted GB News' female advertising chief with a flurry of vulgar abuse. But first, he's the academic who's taken the internet by storm with this damning analysis of woke Britain.
A revolution is sweeping through Britain. What do I mean by that? I'm talking about mass uncontrolled immigration. I'm talking about the fact that we can't even control our own borders. I'm talking about a stifling political correctness.
That sensational clip from best-selling author and Professor Matt Goodwin has already been watched by a staggering 2.5 million people, and the number keeps rising. It's fair to say that it's breaking the internet. The Prof reckons a revolution is coming and millions of people have had enough of the country being dragged into the gutter. Well, he's with me now live in the studio. Matthew Goodwin, great to have you.
Good evening.
You dropped this video a couple of days ago. You were hoping for some kind of reaction, perhaps not this big. Why has it resonated with so many people?
I think, as I say in the video, I think millions of people are looking at Britain and feeling as though we're not just going through political change. We're in the grip of a profound cultural revolution, which is not only about the woke takeover of institutions, but is about mass migration, not controlling our borders, what's happening in schools, the fact we're exposing children to dangerous and radical ideas that have no basis in science. And many people are looking at left and right and just thinking, firstly, nobody's really talking about this, and secondly, nobody really has an answer to this. And I think what I tried to do, and what I'm trying to do through social media and so on, is give people out there a sense that actually somebody is in the public square giving those people a voice, a bit like you're doing with your show and your work as well, Mark.
Yeah, and it's interesting, isn't it? Because if you look at some of the things that you mentioned in that video, first of all, what's being taught in schools. So you've got gender ideology. I think most people would be very, very accepting of someone that chooses to change their name, identify by a different gender as an adult. But at school, gender ideology, which says you can change your biological sex, is very contested, but it's being taught as fact in schools, as you say, not rooted in science, or controversial critical race theory, which effectively says that you are racist based upon the colour of your skin. Again, contentious, let's debate it, but it's being taught as fact.
It's not contentious, it's a conspiracy theory, I would argue. It's not based on scientific knowledge, it's not based on evidence. So what we're doing, and this is why I've got increasingly concerned about these issues, and I think many people watching this show are concerned about what's happening, is we are basically exposing children to radical belief systems which are very divisive, that are inherently divisive, and which are really geared towards pitting different groups against one another along the lines of race, or breaking down the boundaries around things like sex, sex-based rights, family, national identity, the state intervening in a way that it didn't used to do, that intervening in what should be the role of the family and the role of parents. And I think, you know, the problem today, Mark, is no mainstream party, including the Conservatives, by the way, are seriously addressing these issues. They don't have a plan for addressing these issues.
And it's happened on their watch.
And it's happened on their watch. And I've spent the last 3 years fighting to defend free speech in the universities, trying to basically push back against a lot of this sort of hard left woke takeover. And I'm now convinced that we basically need to be doing that across society. We need to be looking at schools, we need to be looking at civil service, we need to be looking at media, the media landscape,
corporations,
the institutions, corporations. We need to be basically shaking up the public square and ensuring there's a much wider range of people with different values, with different voices in that public square.
Now, the great irony is that this powerful elite who have so much influence on our society hate your book, and they're furious with this campaign. You've triggered a lot of powerful people who say that they are not the elite.
Yeah, you see, the first thing I've said is I'll debate anybody about these issues, and remarkably, nobody's taken me up on that offer yet.
You've invited Alistair Campbell.
Yeah, I invited Alistair Campbell to a debate, and he said, well, why would I have this debate? You know, my book that was then spent longer in the bestseller list than Alistair Campbell's. I've asked James O'Brien for a debate. He didn't want to have one. I think the basic issue here is because I think even they know they have become associated with ideas that have no real basis in evidence. And so what I'm trying to do with this community that I'm trying to build, people who are interested in having a different conversation about the country, is try and give people a sense of courage, trying to give people a sense that actually we can stand up and call this out. You know, wherever you are on the political spectrum, right, left, centre, whatever, you can stand up and say, this is actually dividing our society, it's not actually helping our society.
That's right. The old metric of left and right is completely wrong, isn't it? Because these labels get thrown around, and In fact, we've got people watching this show who are perhaps lifelong Labour supporters who hate the woke stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. So the old left don't like it because basically it just violates their sense of class solidarity. The right certainly don't like it because it undermines culture, identity and our shared sense of history. And I think, we're on the cusp of a massive year in British politics, 2024. Yeah. And I think, if you look at where the parties are, there is this enormous space now on the landscape for something different, for something that is basically saying these parties are not defending your economic, your cultural and your national security. And we need something...
immigration, of course.
We need something different.
Net migration, 600,000 a year. Well, illegal immigration as well. And apparently you're a bad person if you think that's wrong.
It's also the fact that we are completely addicted to a political economy that is based on cheap labour and serving the interests of big business over our wider community. Now, the left used to care about that. The left used to care about workers. It used to care about things like inequality and so on. What's happened is that the elite left have basically gone all in on these wacky academic theories, which give them a sense of superiority, basically, gives them a sense of moral righteousness over everybody else. Yeah, it's all about how they derive social status. They derive status by saying, I believe in intersectionality, I believe in whiteness, I believe in white privilege. It's nonsense. It's nonsense. These academic theories really do not stand up to the evidence.
And can we talk about the chasm between these luxury beliefs, which make you look like a very nice person on Twitter, Gary Lineker, Carol Vorderman...
these are minority beliefs, by the way.
Right.
Yeah.
So Gary Lineker has today said that, he sort of backs Just Stop Oil, and we know what Vorderman has said about, Conservative supporters and all the rest of it. But these people have... they're entitled to their view, right? It's free speech. But they have these luxury beliefs because they're not impacted by issues like unchecked migration.
Yeah, so, that's the definition of luxury beliefs. They're preached by the elite who don't suffer the consequences of those decisions, but they're also preached by the elite because they bring them status from other elites. If you take Gary Lineker as an example, many of the things he said about the government's migration policy, about Rwanda, this is a minority view. More people in Britain today support the Rwanda policy than oppose it. More people want immigration controls. They want to live in a society with strong borders. Why is that, Mark? Because it's their home. Their country is their home. They want their home to be ordered and stable and secure. So on a lot of these radical woke ideas and beliefs, what you're finding is that the 10, 20% are imposing their values on the rest of society, and people don't feel able, Mark, to stand up and say, I don't agree with that. And one of the reasons why I'm doing these videos, one of the reasons why I'm promoting this stuff on my Substack and Twitter is because, at a minimum, I want to show people that actually you can stand up and present an alternative argument to these dangerous belief systems, and we need more people to do that. That's why GB News and the Substacks and the YouTube channels and the shows are taking off. That's why, Mark, there is this alternative ecosystem, because the legacy media has failed to do its job in this area. And so it's up to others. It's up to mavericks and independents to do it.
And it hasn't just failed to do its job, it's wagged its finger at the public and said, you're bad people for thinking these things. Look, the clock's against us. Very briefly, is this the beginning of a political party?
I'm interested to see where it goes. I think it's certainly the beginning of a movement.
Could you not rule out becoming a politician and changing Britain in a very tangible way?
I think it's pretty obvious for everybody who's in this community, who's connecting with us on Twitter. I think they can see the direction of travel. I think they can see...
And for you as well, never say never?
I care as much about this country as the people out there.
So now let's get all the numbers out. We know Dan's got a massive audience, so how can people get involved? Substack, what is the best way?
Yeah,
it's
they can
website,
follow me on Twitter at GoodwinMJ.
GoodwinMJ on Twitter.
And they can sign up to Substack at mattgoodwin.org.
There you go. Always a cracking read, as is the book. We've got to name-check the book as well. Come on.
Values, Voice and Virtue.
We've all got bills to pay, Matthew.
You don't make any money off books, I'll tell you that now.
The book is called?
Values, Voice and Virtue.
Brilliant stuff. Thrilled to have you in the studio. This will be an ongoing conversation. Professor Matthew Goodwin, thank you for joining us. Coming up in Uncancelled, after taking a gas-guzzling helicopter trip to Glastonbury last week, is ITV's Holly Willoughby a hypocrite for her sympathetic take on Just Stop Oil this morning? I'll bring you that full clip. And Fleet Street legend Kelvin MacKenzie brings his explosive views shortly, including a shocking attack on our head of marketing here at GB News. Next up in the media buzz, a London theatre last night held its controversial Blacks Only performance. Is that progress? I'll debate that with my pundits. See you in 2.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything, I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Weeknights on GB News from 6 p.m. You'll always get drama.
Please stop, Michelle.
I know, yeah.
Please stop.
Should I just shut up?
Romance.
You like me, I like you. There you go.
There you are. Well, don't tell anybody.
Adventure.
Etc.
That's the whole point.
And action.
Sergeant, read my superstar panel. They're already at it. They're fighting. It's going to be quite a show.
Only on GB News. Britain's watching.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Friday, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News. The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Let's return to tomorrow's news tonight in our media buzz, and more front pages have arrived. Couldn't really be a worse headline. Daily Mail, horror at end-of-term tea party. 8-year-old girl dies and 10 left in hospital as Land Rover driven by a woman in her 40s ploughs into a Wimbledon prep school. Also, The Eye, Home Office paints over Mickey Mouse mural for children at asylum centre. Those are your front pages. Let's catch up with my superstar panel now in the media buzz. And we've got, I'm delighted to say, live in the studio, Daily Telegraph columnist Alison Pearson, surely Britain's most readable and courageous journalist. She doesn't like being called brave, by the way.
No, she doesn't.
Probably a bit patronising. Conservative peer in waiting, the ermine awaits as well. Lord Sean Bailey. And author and broadcaster, freshly married Mrs. Amy Michelle Turner.
Oh.
Lucky Mr. Turner. Mr. T. Now, yesterday evening, a controversial theatre performance advertised for a black-only audience away from what organisers called the white gaze. It was held in London. Bosses behind the Tambo and Bones production at the Theatre Royal Stratford East encouraged white people to stay away from the one-off blackout in what critics have called a backward and racist move. We want to know what theatregoers thought of it all, so we sent Dan Wootton's senior producer, the brilliant Ben Leo, down to get the other side of the argument.
I think the biggest importance is that we need space for ourselves, you know, just to feel free and exist.
Is that what they'd call the white gaze?
I think so. I think that's part of it.
What do you think of that term?
I mean, it's accurate.
I think spaces where people can just be free, be open and feel comfortable are necessary for all community.
What's wrong with white people?
What's wrong with them? It's not that there's anything wrong with white people. I think it's in the same way that like an LGBTQ plus space is for LGBTQ plus people.
His famous quote, of course, where he says, "I had a dream that my children would be judged on the content of the character, not the colour of their skin."
What he was saying was that all people should be judged evenly, but we are not judged evenly in the traditional theatre spaces.
How are black people treated unfairly in theatre? Can you give some examples?
Oh, I'm not here to go into that now because this is a very casual interview outside of another event, and I have many experiences of being treated as other within the spaces I am working by people who are in the audience. I'm not talking about theatre and
audience members.
By audience members.
So what would they do? Just
No. This is not honouring my experience to come and try and trivialise it by just giving you some short answer.
I'm not trivialising.
I'm saying it would. I'm not saying you are.
Great reporting from Ben Leo, who I'm delighted to say stars on tonight's Saturday 5 at 8 o'clock on GB News. Well, Sean Bailey, is this progress?
I think for me, there's so many things buzzing around my head listening to those three ladies speak. Like, one of them talked about, isn't a space for LGBTQT people just for them, isn't it free? And I think there's not a direct comparison because black people actually want to share the experience and say, look, this is what's happened to us. And I think if we sort of hide away, then that experience isn't shared. I spoke to a white guy on the way here and he said to me, what would be the response if white people did it? Now, Amy said to me, well, we're not oppressed and all the rest of that. Sure. But this isn't about black oppression for me. I think the conversation about racism in this country is about moving forward. So yes, we want to tell people a story. Yes, we want to say, look, here's how we feel, here's what's gone on, what changes can you make? But my take on it is that white people are 50% of the equation, so they need to be involved in the conversation to move forward.
It's really important to say that they could go to any one of the other 29 performances. It was just one night.
No, listen, I'm not...
And it was just
Hold on. I'm not saying about one night suggestion, but listen, if someone makes that suggestion, you cannot turn up. Let's be clear about that. It wasn't a suggestion, it was kind of a request. And all I'm saying is this sits in a wider context of many different black people's experiences trying to make their way in the world. And if you do something like this, it affects how other black people move on. So you need to think about that. That's all I'm saying. That girl said we need spaces for us to be safe, to have a conversation, have to think. That might well be true. In fact, it is true. But is this the way to go about it?
Well,
I don't know.
Alison, Sean and Amy, take a look at this because there was another exchange between Ben and one of the theatre-goers and they turned the tables and they asked Ben a question. Take a look at this.
Does that affect your kind of desire to understand and to branch out?
To be honest, I don't personally see skin colour in anyone. I've got two children. They quite naturally and innocently don't look at people and say, oh, he's black or he's Jewish or...
But don't you think that we should, so that we can understand people, rather than just go, I can't see it, everything's fine, because everything's not fine.
Well, that's very interesting, Alison Pearson. That young woman says that Ben Leo, our reporter, should see colour. Is she right?
Well, no, I mean, she's black, so I guess she's entitled to her view. No, I don't think. I was very interested, Mark, to see that person saying about, LGBTQ people need their own space, but girls in England aren't allowed their own toilets. They aren't allowed their own space because that's offensive to trans. So by women wanting their own spaces, that's offensive to trans people. But apparently offence only is a one-way street. If it's us, it's one-way street. So can I just say, I'm a big theatre goer. I love the theatre and what I love about it. I'm also a novelist. It's the kingdom of the imagination is free at the point of entry for everybody. That's the whole point. So you go to see Kill a Mockingbird and you have that experience of the Deep South. You go to see Bent and you see, two gay men in Auschwitz. It's about the shared experience. It's about the huge empathy for the human condition that great theatre can generate. We can see a black Henry V or a black Richard II, and that's supposed to be OK. We're all supposed to be colourblind. But no, we're not allowed to go to a black production. I find it very offensive, and I do think it's racist, and I think it should be discouraged.
Amy, I mean, do you not think this flies in the face of the great Martin Luther King, who said you should be judged by, or he would hope you would be judged by, the content of your character, not the colour of your skin?
I think it's a nonsense to say I don't see colour, we see colour, I can see colour of this table, I can see the colour. You can't say you don't see colour, because if you say that, what are you really saying? That it's like when people say, oh, I didn't think, you don't seem black, or what's your inference then? What does that, you can't, there is
Sean is your friend.
There is a different...
Do you see black when you see Sean every week? When
yes,
you come
I do.
And we have a laugh,
I'm very aware that Sean is black. Like, to say I'm not...
Let me try to answer the question for you.
I'm very aware that he's a natty dresser.
Yeah.
Let me try to answer the question for you. When that girl said you have to see black, right, she's correct, because I am black and it's part of my experience and I want you to see that. When Ben said he doesn't see colour, he's also correct, because what Ben is saying is I don't judge you for your colour. So that girl is saying I want you to acknowledge my blackness, because if you don't, you're not acknowledging a great part of me. But when Ben says I don't want to acknowledge your blackness, it's because he doesn't want to judge, because he wants to give you the chance to display your character, and that's how he sees the world. And it's a nuance. And the problem we have around racism is that people are, you're anti-racist in one corner, everybody's a racist, or you want to just live your life and apparently you're also racist. We need to have nuance around this debate.
Isn't it a bit patronising to people of colour, though, that there has to be a black-only performance, that somehow black people are so fragile?
I can see...
Because there's nothing fragile about Sean Bailey, who almost destroyed Sadiq Khan a couple of years ago, and I wish he'd won.
I do totally appreciate all the arguments, but I just think the intention of this would be if I made a very sensitive piece of theatre about what it is to be a woman, and it was about very feminine issues, say a piece about FGM, and I said, for one night only, can we share this as women? And I just invited women to that one-off theatre performance, and I think that was the intention.
I tell you,
to call it in.
I tell you the problem with that. This is what people, and I will say this, Amy, on the left always do. They make comparisons. That is not a valid comparison, because it simply doesn't have the same. Women don't have the same history as black people.
But the themes
no. I'm sorry. The themes
black history.
Yeah, and that's correct. But you've made a comparison that seems reasonable, and it is not, because what you have to think about is the impact of what you're doing, and what will be the response to that. The history of men and women means that if you do something specifically for women, actually it's often right. Racial history across the country, across the world, is very nuanced. You could quite easily go wrong, and there's always a response. So what have you set in the world by saying, no white people? I thought the whole plan was working together to get along. That sometimes is somebody's head to see, well, I've been held out, so I won't try to get along then.
Amy, briefly, last word.
No, just I think the intention was it was all in good faith, and to willfully misinterpret it as something that could be perceived as racist is unwilling to see the good intentions behind why they did this blackout performance.
OK, well, look, a worthy debate and a fascinating one. Complex, let's be clear about that. My brilliant panel return very shortly with their Greatest Britain and Union Jackass nominations. But next, in Uncancelled, Fleet Street legend Kelvin Mackenzie on whether Holly Willoughby is an eco-hypocrite after supporting Just Stop Oil, seemingly, but taking a helicopter to Glastonbury. Also, a shocking attack on our head of advertising, a young woman, a very talented young head of marketing here at GB News, attacked by a room of arrogant men in the world of advertising. Kelvin Mackenzie responds, and sparks will fly. See you in 2.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive, because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The people's channel.
Britain's news channel.
The Live Desk with me, Mark Longhurst.
And me, Pip Thompson. It's here Monday to Friday on GB News.
From midday, we'll bring you the news as it breaks, whenever it's happening and wherever it's happening, from across the UK and around the world.
Refreshing, feisty, but with a bit of fun too.
If it matters to you, we'll have it covered on TV, radio and online.
Join the Live Desk on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
It's time now for Uncancelled, where Britain's top commentators speak out on controversial issues without the fear of the cancel culture sweeping the rest of the media. And you'd have thought Holly Willoughby fancied keeping a low profile after riding out the Philip Schofield storm, but the ITV star sparked outrage today with this take on the antics of Just Stop Oil.
A lot of my listeners said, please stop covering Just Stop Oil.
But then you look at the... we had our hottest day globally on record today. But I guess their hope is that somewhere higher up will start to make a difference.
Holly, who was last week pictured jumping into a gas-guzzling helicopter for a 136-mile ride from London to Glastonbury for a boozy weekend. Fleet Street legend Kelvin Mackenzie, is this a massive clanger from Holly?
Well, the issue for ITV, and we'll come very quickly to the disgraceful position of the way that the sales director was treated by the ad agencies, is that what they're really doing within ITV is taking a nod towards the agenda from the left. Because if you take the position of anti-Just Stop Oil, there's a very good chance that media buyers will stop taking your adverts, which is what I am really upset about, actually. I am massively upset about what happened to the GB News sales director in Manchester today. Absolutely outrageous. So GB News is going to make some presentations to ad agencies, media buyers. And directly the lady walks up there, Nicola, walks up there. They've been on the source. They start shouting at her. They tell her to F off. And there's a huge kind of sense of violence. And it's by the very ad agencies who are, in truth, boycotting GB News. GB News has a massive audience, much bigger than Sky News, much bigger than Talk TV. Well, everybody has got a bigger audience than Talk TV. But we're not getting the advertising. We're not getting the advertising because a load of I don't know what kind of people they are, left of centre. Perhaps they're not. They don't mind it in their pay packet, but they don't want to see major advertisers appear on GB News. And they attacked this lady who all she was doing was presenting an award. What kind of people are they? And unfortunately, they know what kind of people they are because Nicola actually recognised them and they work for major ad agencies in this country. And
well,
what
absolutely.
we should do now is we should start to name them and shame them. We've tried to be friendly. Now the gloves are off.
Well, Kelvin, I share your anger and disgust. This is GB News' top advertising boss, the brilliant Nicole O'Shea. Now, let me tell you about Nicole O'Shea. She is incredibly smart. She's the very best in the industry, and she's one of the nicest people I've ever worked with. She was shamelessly abused by a bunch of men on the source, as Kelvin said, at an industry awards event. They clenched their fists and told her to F off in disturbing scenes caught on video. Take a look at this. Kelvin, you've been in charge of several very successful disruptive brands, The Sun newspaper and Talk Sport. The industry don't like the status quo being threatened, do they? Do you think people power will win out?
Well, I certainly hope so. Certainly the audience is behind us, even if these media buyers who are slinking around in little hovels somewhere trying to pretend that this kind of successful television, the television of the future, aimed not broadcast, but more narrowcast, it's been hugely successful, is not being supported. This was a disgrace, and somebody should be named and shamed over it. I'd be grateful if they tell me who it is. I'd name them on my Twitter feed.
Well, I wouldn't blame you. Do you think there's jealousy involved? Is there nervousness, Kelvin? Because we know what Gandhi said in terms of your enemies. First they laugh, then they fight you, and then you win.
Well, certainly that's the truth of GBNews. They came from absolutely nothing. It was never going to start. Oh, hello, it's successful. Oh, what should we do now? What we'll try and do now, we'll try and starve it of funds so that it can't become more successful, so it can't hang around, and so it becomes a subscription station or something like that. We want it to stay broadcast. I feel desperate for that lady, Nicola, and I hope that some of these drunken ad agency people literally have the good grace to apologise to her personally tomorrow. It's a form of bullying, and actually these people claim that they have the high ground. Please, excuse me while I throw up, will you?
Kelvin, you were one of my first inspirational bosses in the media. You were right then and you're right now. We'll catch up soon.
Cheers.
Kelvin Mackenzie, founder of TalkSport and, of course, former Sun newspaper editor. It's time now to reveal today's Greatest Britain and Union Jackass. Alison Pearson, Sean Bailey and Amy Nicole Turner. Do your worst. Alison, your Greatest Britain.
Is Sir Jim Ratcliffe, the billionaire owner of chemical group Ionos. Sir Jim told the Financial Times that the UK's energy policy is crap. You won't be able to power the whole UK with wind, said Sir Jim. Another blow against net zero.
Fabulous, fabulous nomination, Alison. How about you, Sean, your Greatest Britain?
My Greatest Britain is original eco-warrior Swampy, who has rejected Just Stop Oil tactics, saying community should come together in order to defeat this. And he's right. I've been saying it all along. If you want people to join the eco-revolution, then you've got to be nice to them. Disrupting their world does not work.
And he's had a bath. Amy Nicole Turner, a couple of seconds, if you could, your Greatest Britain.
Well, I've gone for somebody that I don't think you were very kind to yesterday, Riz Posnet. They're a Republican. They came on the show. They spoke in pure facts, and you just threw emotion back at them. And I think they deserve a fairer hearing next time.
Well, Alison wins. I'm giving it to the voice of common sense, Sir Jim Ratcliffe. OK, Alison, your Union Jackass, briefly, if you can.
I feel very strongly about this, Mark. Union Jackass is the Essex High School where 4 girls were sexually assaulted in the school. Gender-neutral news. The school claims to be the safety of pupils is paramount, but no, identity politics and supporting aggressive trans lobbies is paramount.
Sean, just the name for your Union Jackass?
The Church of England, and it's £641 fee for marriage. They should be making it free. Marriage is a gift. Hopefully the General Synod will vote it down.
The world's gone mad. Amy?
I so agree with that. It's Rishi Sunak. I won't even, just generally. No, because he never turns up to PMQs, specifically.
Not turning up to PMQs. Well, Alison Pearson's done the double. Oh. Yes, indeed. I'm going to give it to that ridiculous school that won't give girls a loo. Thanks for your company. I'll see you tomorrow at 9 for Mark Dolan tonight. Headliners is next.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard.
We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think. Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often